Welcome to the course module covering farm property insurance. Insurance coverage for farms is unique in that a farmer's business and home are frequently located on the same premises. Therefore, farms would need coverage for both personal property and commercial property. A farm property policy can be written as a monoline policy or the forms covering farm. Property can be combined with farm liability, coverage forms, and endorsements to create a package policy to cover all the farm's exposures. A farm property policy contains four sections as follows. Section 1, Coverages. This section contains the insuring agreement A through G. Section 2 contains the coverage extensions. Section 3 are the additional coverages. And Section 4 contains the other provisions such as the covered causes of loss, the limits of insurance, and the deductible. The farm dwellings, appurtenant structures, and household personal property coverage form includes the following insuring agreements. Coverage A, dwellings. This insuring agreement covers dwellings that are defined by the policy to be a building used principally for family residential purposes, including mobile, modular, and prefabricated homes. Coverage is also included for material and supplies that are on the insured location. For the purposes of building, altering, or repairing that dwelling or attached structure. If not already covered by other insurance, equipment used to service the insured dwelling and the ground surrounding it is also treated as covered property. For example, the insured farmer has purchased a riding lawn mower and tractor that will allow him to mow the grass surrounding his house and to attach a blade on the front to scrape snow off the driveway. When this piece of equipment is completely destroyed by a tornado, it would be covered. Coverage does not include land, including land on which that dwelling is located, or water. Trees, shrubs, plants, and lawns are also not covered, except is provided in the coverage extensions that we will cover on a later screen. This situation, where something is excluded on the form only to have coverage added later, is an issue that many students ask us about. For now, please understand that if you were asked the question on your state exam, what coverage is provided under Farm Property Coverage A for trees or shrubs, your answer would be no coverage. Now let's discuss how losses are valued and settled under coverage A. It's a limited insurance on the damaged structure is at least 80% of its full replacement cost. At the time of loss, the insurer will settle the loss on the basis of repair or replacement cost that will equal the smallest of the following amounts. The cost to replace the damaged part of the structure with equivalent construction for use on the same premises. The amount actually unnecessarily spent to repair or replace the structure, or the applicable limit of insurance. So this condition applies when the insured meets the coinsurance requirement. If necessary, you can go back to the Property Insurance Concepts chapter and review the coinsurance formula. It's very important that you commit this formula to memory so you can use it to calculate how losses will be paid under any type of property insurance policy. You will see anywhere from 2 to 6 questions on your state exam that will require you to use this formula. Additionally, please remember that under the farm policy, the cost of repairs or replacement does not include the increased cost attributable to the enforcement of any ordinance or law relating the construction, use, or repair of any property. Now we'll talk about how losses are settled under Coverage A when the insured does not meet the coinsurance requirement. It's a limit of insurance carried on the damaged structure is less than 80% of its full replacement cost at the time of loss. The company will settle on the basis of number 1 or number 2 below, whichever is larger. 1. The actual cash value at the time of loss of the damaged part of the structure. Or 2. A proportion of the cost to repair or replace the damaged part of the structure, without deduction for depreciation. This proportion will equal the ratio of the applicable limit of insurance to 80% of the cost of repair or replacement. For example, a farm dwelling with a replacement cost of $200,000 would require $160,000 of coverage to meet the coinsurance requirement. If the insured carries only $120,000, which is 75% of $160,000, the farmer will only collect 75% of the replacement cost amount for that partial loss, or 100% of the actual cash value, if that amount is larger. Now let's talk about filing the claim under Coverage A. Its a loss qualifies for payment on a replacement cost basis, but the cost of repair or replacement is more than either $5,000 or 5% of the applicable limit of insurance, the only basis on which the insurer will settle pending completion of repairs or replacement is actual cash value at the time of the loss of the damaged part of the structure. In case of such a loss, the insured can make an initial claim for payment on the actual cash value basis and later make a supplementary claim for replacement cost payment. If the supplementary claim option is elected, the insured must notify the insurer of the intention to do so within 180 days of the occurrence creating the loss. Simply put, the insured will collect for full replacement cost coverage on the structure when the repairs have been made. Otherwise, the company will pay only actual cash value for the claim. Of course, this is to make sure the claim's payment is actually used to make the repairs. Now, let's move to a review of Coverage B of the Farm Dwellings, Appurtenant Structures, and Household Personal Property Coverage Form. Coverage B applies to other private structures, appurtenant to dwellings. Coverage will apply to private structures owned by the insured that are pertinent or related to the insured dwelling. Coverage B is 10% of the limit of Coverage A for each occurrence which is additional. Coverage form provides coverage for household personal property. They must be located either inside the insured dwelling or on the grounds of the insured dwelling. The household personal property is valued at actual cash value, but not for more than the amount necessary to repair or replace it. Coverage D, loss of use, is the last insuring agreement on the farm dwellings, appurtenant structures, and household personal property coverage form. The following losses are covered up to the loss of use limit listed on the declarations, and is the total amount available for the coverage is listed below. The time period for loss of use is not limited by the expiration of the policy, as long as the loss began during the policy period and limits remain available. Coverage for additional living expense applies if a covered cause of loss damages the principal living quarters and renders it uninhabitable. This coverage pays for any necessary increase in living expense incurred by the insured, so they can maintain their normal standard of living. Coverage applies for either the time it takes to repair or replace the existing building, or the time required to relocate elsewhere. This coverage also applies to the fair rental value of a tenant-occupied dwelling that is uninhabitable due to a covered cause of loss that damages an insured dwelling or a pertinent structure to the extent that it cannot be rented and rental income is lost. Payment is based on the fair rental value of the structure, minus any non-continuing expenses. The payment period will be for the shortest time period required to repair or replace the damaged property. Coverage D also pays for loss and expense due to emergency prohibition against occupancy. In this situation, that dwelling or appurtenant structure is not damaged, but cannot be occupied because of damage to the surrounding areas, and a civil authority prevents its use because of direct damage to neighboring premises caused by a covered cause of loss. This coverage pays for additional living expenses and fair rental value for a period of up to 2 weeks, excluding any loss due to the cancellation of a lease. So let's say a tornado moves through a farming area. Farmer Bill's farm sustained no damage, but there was extensive damage to the surrounding farms. There are also utility poles down, and live wires are on the roads near Farmer Bill's home. Coverage D would pay for Farmer Bill's expenses to stay elsewhere until he is able to return to his farm dwelling. Now, we're moving on to Section 2 of the form. This section lists the extensions of coverage. If you'll remember, back under Coverage A, the insurer excluded the trees, plants, shrubs, and lawns, but here in Section 2, they add back some coverage for these items. This extension provides some coverage that is additional insurance and applies to all trees, shrubs, plants, and lawns located within 250 feet of a covered dwelling. Coverage is limited to loss caused by fire, lightning, explosion, riot, or civil commotion. Aircraft, not known vehicles, vandalism, or theft. The most that will be paid is 5% of the limit of Coverage A or 10% of the Coverage C limit if the insured does not own the dwelling. However, $500 is the limit for any one tree, shrub, plant, or lawn. Coverage does not apply to any trees, shrubs, plants, or lawns grown for business or farming purposes, or used for agritainment purposes. Government is the term used to describe farm-based entertainment, including activities such as hay rides, pony rides, wine tastings, cornfield maces, pumpkin festivals, and harvest events. The coverage extensions also pay for loss to household personal property of the insured, away from the insured location. Coverage applies anywhere in the world. However, when such property is located at another location, owned by an insured, coverage is limited to 10% of the limit of insurance, shown on the declarations page, or $1,000. Whichever is greater. Household personal property is covered, while off premises and not subject to this limitation, when property is moved from the insured location, because the insured dwelling is being repaired, renovated, or rebuilt and not fit to live in. Also, when the insured is moving to a newly acquired dwelling, there is prorated coverage between the two locations for up to 30 days. The next coverage extension is for refrigerated products that are not farm personal property. It provides coverage of up to $1,000 for loss or damage to contents of a freezer or a refrigerated unit on the insured premises or appurtenant structure caused by a change in temperature due to an interruption of electrical service to refrigeration equipment caused by either damage to generating or transmission equipment or by mechanical or electrical breakdown of a refrigeration system. No deductible applies, and this is not an additional amount of insurance. There is no coverage for farm personal property or property not owned by the insured. Next, we have the building additions and alterations coverage extension. It applies to coverage C, but only when the named insured is a tenant. Any additions, alterations, fixtures, improvements, or installations made or acquired at the insured's expense to the part of the dwelling occupied by the insured are covered. The limit of insurance is 10% of the household personal property limit, unless a higher limit is specified on the declarations. This extension is an additional amount of insurance. If the insured pays for the repair or replacement within 12 months after the loss is settled on an actual cash value basis. If any damage is not repaired within 12 months after the date of loss, the loss is settled based on a proportion of the actual cost of the repair or replacement based on the time remaining on the lease. If anyone other than the insured pays for the repair or replacement, this extension does not apply.